Our next guest is Christof Mayer. He's an architect and a founding member of Raumlabor Berlin, a Berlin-based network collective of architects. Raumlabor works at the intersection of architecture, city planning, and urban intervention. And I believe that's my personal point, that they also offer a model of how to work together as a group, which is pretty much innovative by itself. Welcome.
Thanks for the intro. You understand me? Yeah, okay. Thanks for having me. I will speak about urban practice and refer to Felix Stalder's statement. What I really found interesting about his statement was his definitions about communities. Although we as Raumlabor are rather talking about cooperation, collaboration or commoning, his thoughts of new communities being dynamic as well as integrated, but at the same time partial entities based on voluntary association sound really familiar to me, and I will respond from my perspective out of urban practice. But before I start with my considerations, although you mentioned it, I want to add some words about Raumlabor, which is a collective of currently 9 educated architects sharing a collaborative way of working together and a common interest in urban practice. Urban practice is what describes best our approach, which is located at the edge of architecture, urbanism, art and activism. This means that we reject architecture's dependence on market forces by operating largely outside the market with a focus on social interaction, direct engagement with building and non-conventional funding strategies. So I'm going to speak about the spatial conditions for communities. That's why I want to refer to the traditional definition of community as a village, which is not only a complete social entity, but as well a spatial and territorial entity. That means that the community is a form of social organization, but moreover becomes visible in space. This opens up another layer of identification and belonging, which creates a tangible and clear context in opposition to today's life full of complexity. So the question for me is, what does it need to establish this type of new communities in the physical urban context? Which are the spatial conditions for these voluntary spatial, partial integrated and dynamic communities, and which political, legal and economic framework are necessary to allow a long-term perspective. On this picture, you can see the camp of Occupy Wall Street. And I think this could be seen as a community in time that shared a common political agenda. What we can recognize is that it was more than a normal political demonstration. It was a camp, which could be seen as an on-off presence and visibility in space. By occupying the public space of Zuccotti Park, their protests become visible for a much longer time and got in so far much stronger. But as always, the protest ended in smoke. Maybe this example is a simplified view, but I think it explains the relation between community and space. And I think it shows that access to space could be a trigger to develop communities. And I think it's interesting if you refer to Reiner's presentation, where there are different conditions, because you have a space in abundance and you need people and ideas to create communities, whereas other situations like in Berlin, for example, it's different. So the space is becoming less and less. That's why we have to find new approaches. So like I said, properties in the neoliberal capitalist economy are not a common good. So the question is, how can we, under these conditions, provide a framework that allows different access to space? So in the following, I will present 2 initiatives with different approaches. Both are still ongoing. The first indicates an incremental process with a tactical practice, shaping the project step by step by looking for new opportunities and strategical partners. The second describes an adaptive process following strategic practice, starting with a maximum demand as form of political acting. So the first one is the Coop Campus. It deals with the transformation of a previous cemetery into a new neighborhood. It's located in Berlin-Neukölln, next to the airfield of the former Tempelhof Airport. The Coop Campus is part of an area in Berlin which is for some years now facing radical changes through gentrification. It's an initiative of the Cultural Center Schlesische 27 and Raumlabor. And we started in 2014 with a temporary project on the cemetery. And I think what was important that we found a cooperation with a Protestant church that owns the land. So in the long term, that has been really important. So the Coop Campus creates a frame for various projects investigating different aspects like integration, housing, or urban production. Thus, various actors can be involved in order to promote a step-by-step development according to their respective needs. So far, it has been an incremental process that shaped the idea of the campus within the last 2 years. Our goal is to become a stakeholder in the transformation in order to create a diverse neighborhood in an open process. So these are all pictures from the temporary community center in 2014, which was the catalyst for this project. And it was conceived as an open structure that could be inhabited and used by different groups and people from the neighborhood. So through a dialogue, we realized that there is a need for a different space for diverse social, cultural, and educational activities. Thus, we wanted to continue our engagement in this area as we saw huge potential for the neighborhood with the upcoming transformation of the previous cemeteries. So, like I mentioned before, we stayed in conversation with the administration of the cemeteries, and we found a strategic partner who supported our objectives in community engagement. What you can see here was like the situation when we started with the garden. That is the green marked spot in the back of the cemetery. In the front, there's another green spot that is the school. This was in spring 15. We started with a green nursery, die Gärtnerei, it's a German word for it. This is a joint project with and for refugees. It is made up of a school, a wood workshop, a kitchen, and a big garden. The school and the workshop are housed in a former stonemason building, and we renovated it together for this purpose. The garden was formed on the former part of a cemetery that hasn't been used for ages. So this is always kind of important because people can't understand why we can use a cemetery for a garden project. So the project is conceived both as a place for learning and as well as a learning place. That means that the project is shaping the project by collecting experience and thus creating knowledge. Furthermore, it's not only about us teaching them, but as well them teaching us. So I think this was one of my crucial experiences, because in the beginning you think you have to find new ways of integration and inclusion, but you don't have any idea about how it could work. But this is what I think makes this incremental process very interesting, that you learn step by step and you allow yourself to make mistakes. So, yeah, here the kitchen. So common cooking is always the crucial part in everyday life. This is another thing we did to open the place to a broader public and create more links to the neighborhood. We started a regular event called Café Nana, which means peppermint, which was growing in heaps in the garden. So these events are hosted by the refugees themselves. So they come up with topics they want to share with the community. So by owning these events, a sense of belonging and responsibility is stimulated. In May, we are going to build a greenhouse. I would say it's a sort of a Trojan greenhouse, because this is currently the only building we can get a construction approval for. So actually our aim is to create a building shell for various activities. And with a greenhouse, we want to raise our relevance as a stakeholder in the transformation process, because by by being there, living the place, I think we create facts that are meant to stay for long term. So, and I think this is sort of our vision, because this is going to happen the one or the other way, but that the greenhouses stay between the buildings, and I think they are a vehicle for communicating the process of transformation, and I think this would be a kind of thing that could become really a successful model for developing a neighborhood. And I found it quite interesting because when we started the project, it was really a temporary thing, and I never thought about a kind of urban project that came out of this. So I think this is the potential of working step by step, looking for new opportunities, looking for new kind of strategic partners, and being always open to what the possibilities could be. So the next project is the House of the Statistics that Philip yesterday already kind of mentioned in his presentation. It's a completely different approach that was chosen by the initiative of the House of Statistics. It deals with the current reprogramming. Do I have a laser here? It's here. It's the middle of Berlin. There's the TV tower. So you can see it's pretty located central in Berlin. So, like I said, it's about the current reprogramming of the former House of the Statistics, which is a building complex in the center of Berlin, consisting of 5 buildings with a total area of around 40,000 square meters. The whole complex is now vacant for more than 10 years, and the Department of Urban Development planned to have it demolished for commercial redevelopment. So this is how it looks today. And this is what Philip mentioned yesterday. In autumn 2015, in the context of an artistic action, a giant poster was installed on the facade of the building as a symbolic act of squatting. The poster announced the development of spaces for art, culture, education, and social issues in the existing building. And what we wanted to achieve is to raise attention for this vacancy and to start a discussion of alternative uses. In the evening of the same day, we received a like on Facebook for our objectives from the mayor of the district of Berlin-Mitte. And this kicked off the initiative and opened up the political discussion, which was really crucial. With the decision of the district assembly to implement our proposition, the initiative won formal political support on a local level. So I think this is a project that really operates on a political level to get the access to this building. So in the next step, we installed an open network with assemblies to find partners and create a broader base of support in order to legitimize our proposal as well. I think it's an important thing to find a legitimation for a project in this size. And to keep the discussion alive, we started a campaign so we could build up political pressure for the upcoming elections, which went good for us in our sense. It's a red-red-green coalition, and our proposal has become part of the coalition treaties. So the next step, we raised money to get the funding for a neighborhood academy. So with an open call, the academy was looking for artists who were interested to do projects in the context of the neighborhood. And then we are doing the public studios to create presence on site, to achieve visibility in the urban context, and to offer space for production, discussion, and assembly. So I think this is really important because at the moment the whole discussion was really abstract, not visible. And this would be a next step to claim the space in front of the building, say, this is where we are and this is what we want to do. So the aim of the initiative is that the state of Berlin acquires the property from the current owner, which is the Federal Republic of Germany. In the next step, it is handed over to the initiative in a heritable leasehold with a mandate to develop it as an economically feasible framework to transfer it into a non-profit organization. So it's not that we want to make the benefit on ourselves as a kind of a private initiative, but to give something back to the society and open this framework. So I think in the context of the social crisis of our society, the concept offers answers to current challenges, such as an increasing segregation and communalization of the cities. The objective is to create a paradigmatic development of an urban assembly of existing and new buildings. It offers not only different forms of community housing in areas for public use, but also space for art production, culture, education, and social life. The spatial proximity of the various users create mutual integrative synergies with the inhabitants of the immediate neighborhood. And the former House of Statistics itself is not only a prototype for a large-scale implementation of a synergetic meeting of culture, social education, business and community living, but as well as a place for people of different origins, social institutions and cultural orientations. In addition to classical integration approaches, it offers disadvantaged groups the possibility of active participation in the city society. So I think with this we want to create a framework for new communities being dynamic as well as integrated, but at the same time partial entities based on voluntary association. Thank you.